Cape Cod.
Oh, okay. Cape Cod. So, wow, that's sort of like that's New England, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's the boot of Massachusetts.
Yeah. My dad used to live there up in Maine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, but I lived in New York for a while, or actually Fort Lee, which is up there.
Yeah, I've only been in New York City. I haven't seen much of New York.
Yeah, yeah. But back in LA now.
I'm sure that's an adventure right now.
Uh, yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Just I'm safe in my studio, so you know.
There you go. All right, I'll do the brief introduction. We'll get started. Uh, this is George Dionne with Metal Express Radio, and I'm here with Gerry Nestler of the band Philm. How you doing, Gerry?
Hey, great. Thanks, George.
Awesome. If I knew absolutely nothing about the band Philm, how would you describe the band's music to me?
Ooh, gee. It's heavy. It's kind of Pancho Tomaselli calls it a new kind of heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, it's very youthful, but it's at the same time very rooted. It has lineage and into the to the I guess long lines there. But and it's very intense. Music's very,
Eclectic is a word that I would use personally. It's definitely
yeah,
eclectic.
yeah, it's eclectic. Okay, yeah. It's difficult for me because I don't see things on those terms, but it's
Right.
it but yeah, it'd be eclectic.
You have a new album coming out called Time Burner on February 19th, 2021. Are you going to be releasing any singles? I haven't seen anything out there yet.
No, not as of yet that I'm aware of. We probably will be working on it, working on releasing a single. Um, Probably well, I won't say which song, but there is right now. Spanish Flowers is out right now, which is our video, I guess. It's an animated video,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be seen. LA Film Shorts. It's on their YouTube,
Yep.
and yeah, so there's that, and yeah, we'll probably put out a single at some point.
So let's talk a little bit about Spanish Flowers. It's sort of like a mini short film, not so much a video. Was that
Right.
something that you put together, or somebody came to you and said, "Hey, I'd like to do this"?
Well, that was actually Pancho's brother, Ness Tomaselli, and he was whenever we recorded the song, he got to hear it, and he was really blown away by it. And he's a metalhead, full on Iron Maiden guy, and he was really. It took them 9 months, him and his team to create that work,
Hmm.
and they did it, just out of love for the music and honing their craft, and so it ended up they put it out last year and started submitting it, and it's got like I think 9 or 10 laurels already on that
Hmm.
thing. So that's it's got some great attention to it.
Awesome. Now, it's been about 6 years or so since the last film album. Obviously, there's been some issues there. Has this album been done for a certain amount of time, or was this done over the last year or so?
Yeah, it's been done for quite a while. It's been sitting. Um, we recorded most of it um, throughout 2016, and yeah, it was done. It was by sometime in 2017. I don't know the exact date, but it was probably early 2017, or maybe even 2016. The album was done. Yeah, it was. I did a solo record. Um, Jerry Paul Nestler. It's called Mama's Child, and it was me mostly on the piano. Sort of people call it my jazz album, but I did that one. Actually started that one before the film album, and the film album was done before that one was done. We did it really fast. The film record was done very swiftly.
Right. So there's no way to talk about film without talking about, Dave Lombardo and how things went down when he
Yeah,
left and stuff like that.
that's impossible.
So let's try to talk a little bit about it. What did you had to have? I'm assuming that in order to get this film album out, that there was some issues in retaining the name and retaining music or something like that. What were some of the things you had to
Yeah.
go through to retain everything?
Well, you know, we have to go through a lot actually. I'm still trying to retain things. Um, there's a story. I just, Metal Hammer, for the first time, Metal Hammer had just asked me that question, how and why,
Mm-hmm.
Dave Lombardo left film. And now, it's been 5 years since he went to press, stating that he ended the group. And, the thing is that, let me just say that, I really love the guy. We all had a very loving friendship and bond in the group, very supportive of each other and all of our endeavors. It was very much a brotherly band. That's the way this band worked. And, there was obstacles to overcome after he, I guess, left the group. And I don't really know why, but there's a Facebook page that I was removed. That's actually, I created that Facebook page for us, and I was taken out. So I still don't have the Facebook page, but the name of the band, I created the name of the group. So a lot of this, keeping in mind that film was the only thing that I was doing. The other
Right.
guy, Ancho and Dave, they had numerous things, which, we supported each other with, full on. And so this album too, if I may say, to keep continuing with this, is really what, unfinished business, what we were doing with Dave. And we also did these shows in New York with John Zorn's The Stone, which were tremendous shows. We started doing this stuff on a cruise ship in Brazil with Sepultura when we played this, on this cruise ship with them. And there was a piano bar. So, we got on the piano, bass, and drums, and we just started playing for, over an hour. And there was a great audience, and it was very successful. It was really opened up a whole new thing for us. And so shortly after that same month, we were in New York, and Dave had booked, the Stone, because Dave has ties with John Zorn, working with John. And John is a terrific, it's John Zorn. He's anybody that knows anything about John Zorn knows what I'm talking about. And so we did these shows, and they were they were brilliant. And so and we recorded a session over at East Side Studios or Recorders with Mark Uselli, and Uselli mixed all the tracks, and they're beautiful. It was an amazing achievement. I prepared everything on board the cruise ship prior to our recording. It was about 20 different pieces, and so we were looking forward to that coming out. The fact that it hadn't been released, although we were planning on releasing it under the Film Noir name. That's why the Time Burner record contains 3 pieces that are piano, bass, and drums. This is the reason why. The other pieces on the record, the heavier pieces, at least 4 of them were ideas and riffs that Pancho and me created and played with Dave. Sometimes we'd sneak them in on shows, and we played 2 jams on them. And then there's some new pieces like Spanish Flowers. That was completely, we could have never have done that before with Dave. This was completely when Anderson came into the band. Yeah, there was definitely, back to the obstacles. Yeah, there was quite a few things that needed to be cleared up, including an LLC corporation, just all kinds of things.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So
you
you
know.
also changed record labels. You're now on Meadowville Records and not on Mike Patton's label anymore.
Well, we also on Fire from the Evening Sun was on UDR, and
Oh,
UDR,
okay.
yeah, and UDR is now Silver Lining Music, but
Hmm.
Silver Lining was interested, but not so much, and Meadowville, they were interested in putting it out, so we went with them for sure.
Awesome. Have you talked to Lombardo ever since? I mean, it's been
No,
a
no,
long passage of time, no?
yeah, none of us have spoken since our initial meeting, or our last meeting, not initial. It was our last meeting. It was November 9th, 2015, where we had the meeting. And, you know, we never discussed ending the group, that's for sure. It was a complete surprise to me when he, in January, that he stated that he ended the group. I mean, it's like, really? I was under the impression that we had a lot of work in front of us too, as far as cleaning up. We did have an LLC together, so there was business still to take care of.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I'm back.
Yeah.
All right, so you've kept busy since the band was defunct for a little while. You reunited with your old band Civil Defiance last year,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and you guys did a bunch of live shows and you put out a single. Are you expecting to do anything more with these guys?
Yeah, I would think so. The guitarist had passed, though. Mike Kenny. That
Hmm.
was kind of a big blow to us. He died this year, and we were scheduled too for a Viper Room show early this year, right before the pandemic. So we're kind of sitting on some recordings. Chris Garcia from the Mothers of Invention came into the picture. And yeah, this year happens to be the 25th anniversary of the Fishers for Souls album, which I was notified by Rock Hard magazine that this was, our silver anniversary, and that, it's considered one of the top 500 albums ever made of all time by Rock Hard. So, um, you know, quite possibly we're trying to achieve maybe another Fishers for Souls next time around, something really
Yeah,
great.
exactly. And you mentioned your solo album earlier that was released in 2018. Are you working on anything towards another one?
I would love to. I would love to do another piano album. Right now, though, I've got a lot of, heavier stuff that, I've been working on, or looking forward to releasing. So, including Civil Defiance.
Okay.
So, not yet for any of the piano stuff. I think that the piano record, the Mama's Child record, still has, a long ways to go. I mean, it's a sleeper. It it still needs time to really even sink in, that album.
Right. Okay. So, um, your father was a photographer, or was an artist, Frank Nestler. Do you think that you kind of inherited kind of his artistic sensibilities and stuff? Because between your three projects, there's some similarity, but there's a lot of diversity.
Yeah. Well, he was a photographer and a painter too. Both my parents were artists. And I grew up in an artist, you know, uh, community, kind of. Well, pretty much. Yeah, there's a lot of artists up there in Mount Washington, which is Northeast LA. I grew up next door to the Self-Realization of Fellowship, which was the home of Paramahansa Yogananda, and George Harrison, Ravi Shankar, Elvis Presley would be up there.
Yeah.
Uh, it was a kind of a magical place. My godfather was also a California watercolor. There was a lot going on. Um, I was exposed to a lot from a very young age to what was happening. Um, and my dad worked production. He was a production manager at an advertising agency. Um, but yeah, so I was always around that stuff. The music, it was only my mother's idea that we were trained as young children. But yeah, the art part of it, it's stuck with me for sure. It's a big part of you know my environment growing up, other than being next door to the monastery or the SRF.
Right. So, who were some of your musical influences?
Well, from a when growing up is let's start with as you're a little kid and you got that television on and it's night, I mean, we moved up there in 1968 from Hollywood, and the monkeys were always on.
I love the Monkees.
Yeah, the monkeys were always. You click on that television,
Yep.
and I up there in Mount Washington. There's not a whole lot of city up there, and so there's the monastery, and it was pretty open. So as a small child, the television was what you did, and yeah, the monkeys had a great. You'd see that, and it's like, oh, this is cool. Four guys, they have a band, and they make music. They seem to be they seem to you can't really get their jokes as a small kid, but they seem to know something about something that you don't know about.
Right.
And uh, um, and the music was really great. It's the Wrecking Crew. It's all that great stuff. And my older sister, and the older kids, they were, it was always the Stones and that sort of stuff. Late '60s. But uh, those classical music was around, and jazz, so that kind of played in a lot. But later as you get older, they introduced this new television show too, the Partridge Family.
Right.
And on the weekend, and so David Cassidy comes around, and I'm still a very small child at this age. And you also have a Soul Train, and American Bandstand is on. I wasn't quite, I'm still like 5-6 years old, so I'm not old enough yet to watch the midnight special in the evenings or anything like that. That wasn't until later, when SNL came out, and Don Kirshner's rock concert and all that. But later growing up, as I was growing up, uh, musical instruments and people playing electric music, became very popular. Uh, Me just ditching school, go out at night, seeing bands, backyard parties,
Yeah.
the whole bit, bands like Van Halen in the LA area, Quiet Riot, White Sister. There's just so many groups
Oh,
that,
it's another band I love, White Sister.
oh, White Sister, yeah. It was a, yeah, White Sister. There was, there was, the LA had a music scene, I guess,
Yeah.
and so heavy music or hard rock or whatever, was always present, and
Yep.
later, you know, um, post Van Halen, as we entered the '80s, and post Ramones too, when we had this stuff, you had the groups like the Germs, punk, started. I remember listening to Rodney on the Rock all the time, and I first heard the Germs there, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is like, what is this?
Right.
And so you still had, I guess there are dinosaur bands by that time, Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, but those groups, emanated, or, especially Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, those two were what, as I was growing up, your friends would call metal, heavy metal,
Right.
And it was a darker thing that maybe even mysticism involved, in different ways between the two groups. And you had in 1972, or I think it's early 70s, sometime The Exorcist ends up coming up, this movie, and it's post Manson murders,
Right.
and in my area itself, we had what they called the Hillside Strangler. The first body was dumped maybe 3 blocks from my house, and in the 70s, it was the end of the Vietnam War, Nixon, and it just it was just this something was in the air around that time, and the heavy music, meaning mostly Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, were sort of, that's where I draw the roots of all this from. That's where
Yep.
everything comes from. And when punk started, getting back to the germs and all that, and people started playing a little bit more aggressively, or recklessly, I would call it, more reckless. It was so appealing, as a young teenager, and it was different from playing all your notes correctly, and
Yeah.
it was more about letting it out. You wanted to, and it's always been, even the Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, about rebellion. It's always been about this rebellion and individuality, and really
Yeah.
expressing yourself, and which was so different from, it was counterculture, it was underground, it wasn't part of the mainstream,
Sure.
and so it was a voice or something as youth that, I remember being in high school, I was, very outcast, and you draw into the music at a very young age, because it's kind of like how skaters find they find their souls in skating, or with their groups and friends,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like that.
So, as an older artist, where do you find your inspiration from? It's not about rebellion anymore. It's not about, fuck the
Oh,
world,
sure.
but
Oh, well, in many ways, it still is about rebellion. That never stops.
it's a different kind of rebellion.
Yeah, I guess it's uh, you know, I'm really into, like, I'll always have been too. Because when I was very young, the piano teacher I had was so strict and proper. And my sister, who's a year younger than me, keep in mind we're like 6 years old, 5 and 6, and she's excels at this, the black dots on the paper and everything, and she's excelling. My sister, by the way, is a judge now. I don't know if I should even.
Ah,
She became a lawyer and a judge, but and I thought, you know, I wanted to study this, so I tried my best. But it got to a point where the teacher said, this is wasting my time, and he's not going to amount to anything with this. So, you know, forget it. You're going to have to, I'm not going to do this anymore. Or but maybe you can find another teacher. I could recommend somebody else for you, because he's just not. And this was, my mother, had made a vow to my uncle, who was a violinist, or symphonic, played in a symphony. and he before he died, that we were all trained on the piano. So she sought out another teacher, and this other teacher comes to the house, and you know, her hair's a mess. She's you know, she's got books that are like papers sticking out, and she sits down, and she, you know, throws this book in front of me on the piano, and and she starts writing with her pencil a date. You know, I think it was 17 something, and it was Mozart. You know, it was the prelude. I forget which, the C major, and she says, "I know that you're at this level." He says, just you, I know you're at this level. He goes, that's the date that this Mozart was born. He says, now let me tell you a little bit about him. And she starts telling me about the piece, when the piece was written, who he is, why this is so important. And there was nothing about the dots or the black
Right.
dots on the paper. And oh my goodness, all of a sudden I was like, I just bought into this, you know, this is great. So she really knew how to open me in, you know, open the doors for me to this stuff. And so she introduced me to, you know, music as being more of a privilege, and, you know, there's great humility with it. It was really she herself, you know, was a composer. Her husband was a composer, her late husband, and they're LA people, and you know, just real people that were real artists. And you know, so she kind of guided me, and that sort of rebellion, it's a rebellion in there. There's a rebellious spirit to that too. It's all artists, really, you know, because your life, this is your life, you know, you become your work, you know.
Right.
And uh, um, later I had a guitar teacher, you know, who, you know, him too. He was just very few students because nobody could handle him. You know, he was, you know, come back from Vietnam, and he taught me everything he could. But I remember he did say this one thing. He said, if you were to take, he says, I'm going to need to let you go. At one point he said, I'm going to need to let you go. I can't really, you know, help you anymore. And I want you to understand that everything that I know and everything that you know is just like a speck of a grain of sand on a massive beach. And but there's guys out there that can tell you about the beach, you know, and know a
Right.
lot more about it. And he said, you know where these guys are? And I said, and you know, I said, I don't know, tell me. He goes, they're fucking starving, man. They're fucking on the street, you know. And so it's right. So
Yeah.
you're not going to find them in your fucking magazines and on the cover, people telling you they're the best of this, you know.
Yep.
So, you know, it was, you know, great teachers, great teachers. Even when you know, I didn't graduate from high school. I left high school I started working, and I saved every paycheck so I could make it into a good college, music school. And I did. I was very young, and you know, I don't even think I was quite even 18 yet, but I saved every single paycheck to start to enroll me. And I thought, you know, I wanted to be a film composer. And so they told me, you know, Dick Grove Music School has the highest rate of people turning people over into working into the studios, and you could be doing film composition. And I thought, okay, I'll do that, you know. And so I enrolled, and I took this course, you know, all these courses, and one of the courses was, you know, a sight reading course. You know, you have to sight sing, and all
Yep.
this. And the teacher there was a horn player, Terry Janot, And every time I came into the room, he'd call me a different Gerry name. He'd say, "Hey, Jerome," or Jared, or Gerald. Just to F with me. Every single time I'd show up, he'd call me a different Gerry name. And I
Yeah.
knew, and I didn't know it at the time, but he was trying to break me down. And toward the end of the course, he came in one morning, and he looked at all of us and he said, "Today I'm going to ask each and every one of you to tell me why you're here. Who influenced you, the most to get here?" And it was primarily a jazz orientated school. So,
Yeah.
most of the kids there were, they said the same thing. Miles Davis, John Coltrane, you know, um, Lester Young, all these names,
Hmm.
popped up, these famous jazzers. And, you know, then he said to everybody, "Now I want you to tell me where these guys learned how to do what they do." He said, "Do you think mommy and daddy paid for them to come to Dick Grove Music School?" He goes, he said, "I'll tell you where they learn, man, on the fucking street,
That's
and
right.
it was at that point I thought, you know, I'm not going here anymore.
So is music the only thing that you do?
It kind of is, other than, surviving every day. I'm a
Right.
dad. I'm a dad. My ex-wife, we met at ASCAP, Civil Defiance at, when I was young, or it was a very successful Hollywood group, I guess. And I got out of music for I've never got fully out of it, but, I became a dad. I have 4 kids, and, you know, you got to take care of kids. So, you know, uh, um, I was, I had different things that I was doing to support the family, but, I did meet Dave Lombardo after a Civil Defiance tour of Europe in 1995, 96, something like that. He was in Grip Inc. And the bass player of the group, my group, was going to go with Dave, with Grip Inc. because of Gus, um, the singer for Grip. And but he decided not to go. The bass player, I don't think he cared for Valdemar, the guitarist, and so he went with me instead, to Europe. And after we got back, that's when I first connected with Dave Lombardo, and we started, this group, which
Yeah.
at first it wasn't called Philm. At first, it was called Letterbomb, which was Dave's name. Dave created that name, and later, I came up with this, name, Kleck Muzzle, that I thought was just,
Oh, that's how you pronounce it. I couldn't figure it out.
yeah, thanks, yeah, Kleck Muzzle. And they looked at me and said, "Okay." Everybody said, "Okay." But I thought, as we're using that name, it was just like, wow, that's an odd name. It still doesn't feel right. And one day I was driving up to his house, and I just thought, film. So I got up there, and I remember sitting down in his not living room, but family room, where his young boys used to play computer games. And I said, "How about, guys, I got this name called Film," and everybody liked it. And so that's how Film started. And um, yeah, it was we had I had kids, Dave had kids, and I used to, I used to admire, Lombardo, his family, his wife, and the kids. I used to love to go up there, and he was a good, uh, role model for me in terms of a guy who played music and had a
Yep.
family. You know, I thought that was
Right.
very, yeah, really liked that a lot. I remember on his birthday one day, I bought him a plunger. I went to Home Depot and I got him a plunger, and I gave it to him. I said, "Here, happy birthday." He goes, He goes, a plunger? I said, yeah, because his bathroom was always, it always needed.
Nice.
Gotta get you something useful.
Well, maybe after all the lockdowns and everything, maybe you guys will reconnect or something like that.
Yeah.
You can never say never in music.
No, nothing in life is ever definite, and nothing's ever certain of anything, but I certainly, you know, uh, all I've been trying to do, George, with the film thing is, um, I felt like whenever this happened, that I was left with this unfinished business. This,
Right.
like, you left me with a plate full of stuff, and I know the other guys in the, Dave, he's got other things on. He had Dead Cross. I know he, uh, I'm really, it really sucks that what happened with Slayer. Um, that really sucks. It, you know, when we were doing film and Slayer was happening, we just, Slayer was just such a great group,
Yeah.
And this was, somebody asked me, does it bother you to be a side project? I go, no, it doesn't bother me to be called a side project, although it's not a side project for me. And I think for Dave too, his whole heart was into the group. All of us
Yeah.
were, really, even Pancho. He played in War and Tower of Power, and that's another unique thing about the band. Is that you have a young, Pancho's younger than me, and he learned a lot of what he learned playing with Lonnie Jordan from War. And this is like, this is Eric Burden's group. This
Right.
is a lot of these guys are, guys like Larry the Mole Taylor from Canned Heat would come to our rehearsals, or the drummer for Tower of Power, Dave Garibaldi, was into film. Pancho replaced Rocco during the Tower Power tours, the bass player Rocco, and that's a tremendous rhythm section. It's not easy to be able to do that kind of stuff, and it's great. I guess what you said, eclectic. So the music is very, Dave too. He I don't know if many people have heard his work or the drumming. He's when he's played with John Zorn or any of those guys, the stuff that he does with them. I know there's Phantomus. I know that he does, people are kind of into that, but that's like mainly a Mike Patton thing, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say that Time Burner is finished business at this point, or
yeah,
you're gonna tying everything up?
Yeah, yeah. And Anderson Quintero, his when he came into the picture, Anderson, this young guy, whenever Pancho first met Anderson, he told me, yeah, I went to go meet with him, and all of his shit was all over the front, this apartment building on the grass. His girlfriend had thrown out all his shit. I'm like, my God, what's up with this guy? But he ended up connecting. We had this one. The first time it was at I'm not going too long, am I, on this?
No, hey, if you want to talk, I'm fine.
Well, we went to what is it? Nightbird Studios, which is Jeff Beck's studio. It started out at the Sunset Marquis Hotel in off Sunset Boulevard. It's this, I guess, if you're in that celebrity or money bracket, it's it's someplace you might not find me ever again. But we're downstairs in this studio, and they had set up a piano, and Pancho had arranged this, and Anderson showed up. First time I met Anderson, he was setting up his percussion. They put a microphone on the piano. Pancho plugged in his bass. We didn't even say much of anything to each other. Just, hey, didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about him. He didn't know anything about me. And they pressed record and we went. And the first 11 minutes we played for about 11 minutes straight. And that's what you have on Time Burner. That's the piece Time Burner. It's just us for the first time we met, the music we made, uncut, unedited, this is it. And so that's what you get, So there's a purity to that, of course. There's an honesty to that. And it reveals, you've got to be able, if you can connect or not. It's not even a question. We are connecting. We are doing this. And the beauty of that is something, too, that film had with the film noir stuff with Dave. That's what we were doing. So it kind of was helping me make up for, all that stuff that the public probably will never hear or is lost now. It's there. It's just I'm not allowed to, I was told that I'm not allowed to touch that. Yeah, even though I'd reached out because we owed money on it, and I reached out to him. I said I'm willing to, cover the debt, and said, yeah, but I can't. They told me we can't give it to you unless you want it without the drums on there. And it's like, gee, okay, well, that settles that then.
Yeah, I guess so.
You're leaving out 1/3 of the whole thing. So, it was Time Burner that's what that is. There was a bunch of other stuff we did too. So I chose 2 other things we did that day to be on the record to kind of balance it out. And I would say that Time Burner is that's what it is. It's like the wrapping it up. Anderson it was a great person to work with in terms of him being part of a lineage of master percussionists. His father, Luis Quintero, and Luis's father too. They're responsible for a lot in salsa and a lot that happened in New York, a lot that happened in Venezuela. As far as it's a long lineage of musicians and percussionist singers. If you took all the greatest percussionists in the world, I'm sure there'd be at least 2 or 3 Quinteros in there. He's part of something that has a lineage and a line that's very deep. So there's a depth to his playing there, in those terms, and that kind of stuff. Bringing that into film, kind of made up for not having Lombardo there, and it opened up a whole nother dimension too that was heavy. It's got depth, a lot of depth to it, and so it was a great thing to have. The drumming itself, his drum work is he's just a really great drummer, really great percussionist. He plays in a whole nother world of musicians too. Like I mentioned Dave with John Zorn and even Mike Patton and all that stuff, but most of Dave's stuff is not in the area of that Anderson's from. It's not from there at all. And so that stuff that Anderson brought in kind of filled in the space in a completely different way, but just as powerful and huge and deep. So
sure,
it was you know, it's a great, I really, you know, it was a good job on the album. For me, Chris Sorum, working with Chris Sorum in the studio at Nest Recorders. That's where I did my solo record too.
Yeah.
At Nest Recorders. And Chris Sorum, the relationship I have with him is you know, is very very productive. We make great music together, and he does as well with everybody he works with, you know.
Right.
So you know, Time Burner 2 is you know, I don't know, you know, I hope people like it. I mean, it's definitely, you know, I've been questioned. Aren't you worried that this is going to, you know, go? People aren't going to understand what this is, and I'm not worried about that at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm if you follow it from the beginning to end, it is what it is. I'm not here. You know, the record is not here to make you think or be in awe in any way other than just telling the truth and just being pure about it.
Sure.
It's not here looking for praise. It's not here to try to do any of those kinds of things. It is, you know, but at the same time, it's not something that you're going to be able to tear down or you know, break down as crap. This stuff is really, you know, this stuff
Yeah.
is really powerful stuff.
I have to agree. It's not typically the kind of stuff I listen to, but
Right.
I know it's good. It sounds good. It's great. It's got a nice groove. You know, it's I would liken it to maybe, you know, you said Fat Tomas and Mr. Bungle a little bit. I'd say it has that feel, but it has its own thing. You got your own thing there, and it's tough to put words on.
It is. It's but the purity of it is what you know, I'm most pleased about. And, you know, especially Spanish Flowers, I'm really that's pretty much the gem of the
Yeah.
album. And you know, it's so weird, you know, because music, you know, like George Harrison used to say about the Beatles. Um, and if you watch the Beatles, if you ever watch them live, and you notice where George is much of the time when they do their live concerts, not in particular their television shows, but you know,
Right.
performance, but in the live, you'll see him kind of in this spot while McCartney and Lennon are up there in the front, and there's Ringo on the side. And it's almost, if you were to view them, the shots that they show from behind, sort of behind, you see kind of like George being the secret kind of silent conductor to all of this, you know, which is really interesting because he's actually playing a very powerful role, but it's sort of silent, kind of like a John Paul Jones thing in Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
maybe. And George had said, you know, that, you know, first of all, the word love is used how many times? 800 something times in the Beatles songs. And that they were very conscious that even though they didn't know what they were writing about, that they had to really try to keep it positive. I guess this was Lennon that said this too, because they knew that what they were doing had a big impact on, you know, the world. And so even though they weren't fully conscious of what they were doing, they knew that, you know, it would have repercussions, and things would manifest later. So with that being said, you know, Spanish Flowers, what's interesting about that to me is that how that came about was very swiftly. And I wrote the lyrics as a love song, really. And it came very fast. But when these kids did the video, that we're talking about, the animated thing, which is, you know, about this priestess and, you know, the burning of this, I guess, dead or somebody that's passed. And at the end, all these flowers appear on the hillsides, you know, of the video. Everything changes into color. And there's a peacock feathers, which are also symbolic. There's all sorts of symbolism that these kids were doing that they weren't even aware of. The thing that the reason how I became aware of it personally is because I work with Chris Garcia, who's the drummer for the Mothers of Invention, and he is a professor of Mesoamerican music, and you know, he taught me a lot. He told me the story about, you know, in 1534, you know, the conquistadors, or you know, the civilization, the pyramids in Mexico, Montezuma and such, the Aztec civilization. And, you know, there's tombs now that they know that are under there. And how this creates an arc up to the pyramids of Egypt. And in 1530 something, this story about this drunk, is it Juan Miguel, the drunk? I don't know. Forgive me if I'm wrong on the name. But he, the Mother of God comes to him, which is Our Lady Guadalupe, which she's in the Basilica in Mexico City, and she has a sash that comes across her right there. The only one with a sash, because that's actually an indigenous garment. And she tells him he has to go to, you know, and tell them that he's seen the Mother of God. And he says, no, I can't fucking do that, because if I go do that, they're gonna freaking kill me. You know, she goes, no, you're gonna go do this. And of course he goes and he tries, and he's just a drunk, so they spare him. But she says, no, you've got to go to the east side of the mountain. And he goes, no, I gotta see my uncle. He's dying. I can't go there. He goes, no, you're gonna go to the east side. Anyway, the story, you know, fast forward, he ends up going, and she reaches into his cloak and pulls out these flowers. And all these flowers on the Tepeyac, you know, and here in Los Angeles, everybody's, you know, from Mexico, Mexican Americans, all from the east side. You know, a lot of them, maybe lots of friends of mine don't even know this story, but there's a reason for this. And you know, all the flowers appear, and this is very significant. So let me explain, because before this story or event or story takes place, the indigenous people of the Americas, they didn't have a concept of what Europeans, or, you know, call as heaven. And to them, they had another place called the flower world. And the flower world was someplace that only elites could enter. The common people could not go there. So the fact that this drunk who is able to do this with the flowers, all of a sudden, millions and millions and millions of people, because of this one story, convert to Catholicism back then in 1530 something. So the significance of this, which was really unknown to us, ends up being on this animated film called Spanish Flowers. Yeah.
Interesting.
Completely unknown to us, though. You know, not, you know, unknowingly, this ends up appearing on it. So very, interesting stuff when you know, film to, you know, a lot. You know, you mentioned my dad and art. You know, my sister used to always tell me when I was young, you know, art is about homage. You know, And homage is, and like Igor Stravinsky said, we all steal. But what it really means is like it's homage. It's like you've taken from, but you got to take from the past. So, you know, a lot when I was in New York, you know, I got to see when I was living there a gallery exhibit of photographs taken of Billie Holiday, and Billie Holiday. These were never seen before seen photographs, by the way, and they were very personal. Like some of them with her dog, um, and she wasn't portrayed as the the battered woman, heroin addict, and such. She was really, you got to see her really as just as you and me are speaking right now, real people and
Right.
such. And this part of her, it's so beautiful. But the photographer had passed, and his son was giving you know, the exhibit, and he started his speech out that night with these words. He said, "Life is short, art is long," and that really stuck with me. Um,
Yep.
so so you know, we understand that, you know, um, even when you look at Van Gogh and you see, you know, everybody knows who the fuck Van Gogh is right now. But, you know, he never sold a single painting. He
Right.
never,
Exactly.
you know, um, uh, Chopin only did a total of 17 gigs, you
Right.
know. Uh, I've done more gigs than Chopin.
Right. Right. Right.
So anyway, you know, it's wonderful to for us to have art in music and everything. And I definitely am somebody that is aware of art in heavy music or in whatever is, you know. And you know, you can always tell people's intentions with whatever they're doing. You know, your intentions can never be hidden. You
Right.
know, if if a person's out there to show off and that's your intention, well, that's, if you know, it's going to become clear. Just if not right, if it's not right away in time, it will become
Right.
clear. So you want to always tell the truth and uh, and authenticity in whatever you do.
Absolutely. Well, that's all I got for you today. I
Yeah.
appreciate you speaking with Metal Express Radio.
Thank you, George.
It was a great talk. I learned a lot, I think.
Uh, well, it's you know, I'm gonna write a book someday, maybe.
Yeah, you should. Absolutely.
You know, there's a lot I've seen. Oh, gee, God, living in LA,
Yeah.
Hollywood, you know, I was a would-be child actor at one time.
Yeah.
I just, oh, gee, there's a between who my parents were, I just have a lot. There's a lot I could tell.
Right. On the flip side,